Well, here we are, another Ask Dave Fenoy Anything, 6 p.m. Pacific, and it might be a different time where you are, but hey, here we are. And a reminder, all the Ask Dave Fenoy Anythings live on my YouTube channel, Dave Fenoy Voiceover Training. Please subscribe. And if you'd like voiceover classes with me, davefenoy.com. Click on the Study VO tab. I'm going to have a Christmas special coming up very soon. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, Dave Fenoy VO. Hey, just got some news before we jump in with my very wonderful guest. Looks like the strike is over, the SAG-AFTRA strike. In the last couple of hours, negotiators and striking union members came to an agreement as of 12:01 tonight. Well, that'll actually be Thursday. The strike is supposed to be over. Now, it has not been ratified yet, and members will have to ratify. I'm not sure what it's going to do about the pending video game voice actor strike, but this is good news. So, yay! And that said, let's check in with my guest, Kal-El. Kal-El, and oops, wait a minute, I forgot. Oh yeah, this thing. I'm being awarded the Legacy Award for my years in service in the voiceover wars. No, it's not been a war. But at That's Voiceover on Thursday, December 7th at 6 p.m., my good friend Joe Cipriano is going to award me the prize for my years of service doing voiceover, and I couldn't be more proud, more humbled. And if you'd like to be there, it won't cost you anything. It's at the Hilton Los Angeles at the airport, 6 p.m. No charge to get in. Would love to see as many friendly faces as possible, and I'll just leave it at that. Well, that said, now let's get to my guest, Kal-El Bogdonave. How are you, man?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Real good. Well, I thought I was going to miss you there for a minute.
I know I was struggling to get, I'm traveling at the moment. I was struggling to get on the internet, but I have tethered to my phone, and that
there we
seems
go.
to be
Well,
working.
let's keep our fingers crossed. That
Yeah,
internet.
crossed.
That
Yeah, I
traveling.
know.
Now, when we talked
Yes,
the
indeed.
other day, you were here in Los Angeles?
No, I was in Maine, on Mohegan Island. I am still in Maine, staying at some friend's house, and tomorrow I am flying to Los
Oh,
Angeles.
okay. Okay,
So
let's see. I'm going to get
all
you
over.
a little more volume here. There we go.
Oh yeah, there we
And,
go.
we have worked together in a number of things. Fallout 4.
Fallout 4.
As a matter of fact, where I played, he was a mutant, super mutant.
Yes, a number of roles in Fallout over the years, and lots of other projects as well. I mean,
Oh yeah,
shooting
we worked together a lot. And I
Um,
think probably a
I'm
year
into-
or more ago, I said, I want to get you on my show, and we're finally doing it. So listen, everybody wants to know, Kal-El,
yes,
how did you
yes.
get that name? I mean, did it cause you problems in school when you were a kid?
No. So my father, John Bogdanove, is a comic book artist. He drew Superman for a long time. Um, my parents named me though before he ever had a professional job in comics. It was just the wishful thinking of a couple of well-meaning nerds, and they secreted it, and he ended up actually drawing Superman for quite a long time afterwards. But no, never a problem in school. I have found that if somebody knows what it is, you kind of know you're in the nerd herd together, and if they don't, it's just a good icebreaker. So
You know what?
yeah,
I probably should have heard that before, but the nerd herd. It's the first time I've
yeah,
heard that. But I'm kind of a nerd myself, but I'm in disguise. So
yeah.
I guess
Well,
I
it's
was
cool
never
now.
hanging with the nerd herd, but I got some nerdy tendencies.
Yeah,
So as a
yeah.
nerd,
it's
You
become
know,
cool now, 'cause all that stuff has gone mainstream. So
oh, yeah, well, you know
it's
what?
cool to be
Nerds
reading
are
comics,
ruling the
video
world now.
games. Yeah,
Who are the coolest
somewhat.
people? They're the people, they're not the football players anymore, unless you're dating, what's her name? Um, Taylor Swift. They're not the
Yeah,
football
that's pretty
players anymore. They're the people doing really cool stuff, like being a cartoon artist, like doing something neat on the internet, being some high tech person. And of
Yeah,
course, you've got cool points for directing some of the best, most popular AAA games on the planet. I got a list here. I'm just going to look at some of these.
okay.
Marvel's Avengers, Forbidden West, Horizon Forbidden West, Multiverse, Diablo, Immortal, Overwatch 2, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, League of Legends, Convergence, and of course Fallout 4, we talked about before, and proud to say I'm on some of those
Yeah.
games. How did you get in this wacky business?
Well, first I want to say that a lot of those projects are projects that I did direct, but I also many of them are so big and so vast that it takes several people to do that. So I am just one of a team of really talented people. Anything Blizzard starts with Andrea Toyas, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League is, I walk in the footsteps of the great Amanda Wyatt. Um,
Your name and
Horizon
the
Forbidden
people I
West.
have worked with.
I was just lucky to be brought on to direct a lot of their mission cinematics and dialogue. But always a privilege to be involved. And it doesn't just come down to me. I'm one of several in most of those cases. So I got into working in games and animation in a kind of a roundabout way. I grew up doing theater, doing a lot of theater, community theater in the town I was from. I was an actor, um, and starting when I was 8, I was doing theater right up through. Um, a lot of Shakespeare, which I find very valuable training for voiceover. And towards the end of that, my high school years, I founded a theater company with some friends, and we created original material. Um, After that, I went off to college, um, and I went to Emerson College in Boston, which is a spectacular media
One
arts
of the
school.
120 or so colleges in Boston.
Quite a few in Boston. Yeah, it's a great college town. But Emerson is a great school because you get to be very hands on in your chosen field very quickly. There are a lot of film schools where you take a lot of theory classes and a lot of history classes, and you're a junior before you ever touch a camera. In Emerson, you're boots on the ground making short films if you want the week that you get there. So I had that great Emerson education, which I use all the time. Um, I took a lot of great classes there with some really spectacular professors, Gene Stewars in screenwriting, and Michael Ilianow in screenwriting, Pierre Desir for cinematography, and a phenomenal directing teacher named Tom Kingdon, who was a BBC working director, worked on EastEnders, stuff like that. A person who'd made his life not on giant famous projects, but who treated directing like, it is an art, but he also treated it like a
It was
craft
a
with
job.
fundamentals you
It
can learn. It's a
it was a
job you can learn how to
skill,
do.
as opposed to I am
Yeah.
the artiste. I'm the guy who knows how to put this together. Let's do this thing. No, you over there, camera right here. So yeah, yeah.
Yes, and
I
from
say all
him,
the time we are artists, but we are also technicians. And if you don't get the
yeah,
technical part down, sometimes it's tough to find that artistry.
yeah, and you can learn, how to be a better director um, by studying technique, the way you would learn to be a better dancer by studying technique, or to be a better mechanic by studying technique. There are concrete nuts and bolts skills you can learn. I learned a lot of them in school. So anyway, when I left school, I finished my Emerson stint in Los Angeles doing their internship program, which is spectacular. And I interned at Stuber Parent, which was on the Universal lot. There were two producers, Scott Stuber and Mary Parent, who had been the co-chairs of production at Universal during the period when the Mummy movies were made, and basically those movies, under Scott and Mary's guidance, saved that studio from closing. They were close to bankrupt, and then these two turned it around.
And
And
these
so they had
movies were made in what years?
the Mummy movies were in the mid and late '90s, and I was
Okay.
working for Scott and Mary um, in 2007 in my
Ah, those
internship,
mummy movies. You know,
and
I got enough gray
so
hair. I remember the old mummy
oh
movies.
yeah, no, but and what Scott and Mary had done was they had dug into that Universal library of great monster movies like The Mummy and Frankenstein like that, and they had sort of used them to pull the studio back from the brink. And the two of them had stepped down from co-chairs of production to produce on the lot, essentially, I think, so they could make money off of the great movies they were producing instead of just making a salary. And they had just made a movie called The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston, which had
Hmm.
made a bazillion more dollars than it cost to make. So they were riding high at the time, and I had an internship there. I learned a lot by being on the lot. And by cold calling people I probably shouldn't have done, like Jane Espenson, the wonderful writer of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and many other amazing projects like
Sometimes you got to do
House.
what you got to do, and when you
She
really know when I went into radio, I got out of school, Columbia School of Broadcasting. Little did I know how terrible it was. I'd gone to college, but then I went. But I finished, and I was sending letters to people. Yeah, I'd like to be your next morning guy, and
mm,
just
yeah,
ego. Not wise, but it did open some doors. Nobody pulled me in to start at the top, but they pulled.
yeah. You have to tell people what you want to do.
Yeah,
The absolute worst case scenario is they can say to you, well, you're probably not ready for that, but here's how you could get there, right? And
yeah.
I've been lucky to encounter a lot of people who have done just that. But anyway, when my internship wrapped up, there was a chance to take on an assistant position in development, and I turned it down because I had decided that I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to go out and start writing and directing. And that was the kind of heuristic decision you can make very easily at 21. Um, and right after I did that, there was a writer's strike, not unlike the one we have just gone through in 2008. There was this huge writer's strike, and suddenly there was like no work in film and television, and everybody was struggling. And I was picketing, along with everything. I'm a big union guy, but also I was kind of privately, peeing my pants because there was no way to make a living. Um, so during that time, an Emerson colleague forwarded me an email from a company called Blindlight. Blindlight was looking to hire uh, writers for video games. Blindlight is a production service group
Yeah.
for interfacing the Hollywood with the game industry, and at
You
the
know,
time that was not as frequent as it is
it's
now.
interesting. Get a lot of auditions coming my way, and I'm always just a
Yeah,
little bit happier when I get a blind light audition because they really know what they're doing.
they
Uh,
do.
the
It's a
audition
polished
scripts are
operation.
good. You get enough information without too much information. You get
Yep,
lines that really will help you bring this character to life.
yep.
And there's some other game companies you wonder, well, who sent this?
And yeah, no, they are. They're a very polished shop. They've been doing this business of bringing Hollywood talent into the game industry for a very long time now. But at the time, they were looking to hire writers to farm out to game developers because basically this was a time when the narrative side of video games was not yet as developed or as respected as it is now. And there were a lot of things happening where, like, a developer would, have some, guy who writes code write the script, and then the publisher would get a look at it and said, "Oh, this won't do it all. Hire Hollywood guys." And then they'd come to Blindlight would hire us, which was hysterical because I had very little experience at that time. Uh,
But at
I had
least you had
written
been on the path.
Well, I had practiced quite a bit. I had a couple things that helped me get that job. They were looking for somebody who had written television and comic books, and I had written one short story for DC Comics, a 3-page short story for DC Comics, and I had my senior screenwriting thesis optioned for television by ABC Family, but never produced. But I had really strong samples, right? So I sent in my samples and I got that job, and I started getting little bits and pieces of jobs from Blindlight writing. And somewhere along the lines, I became aware of the fact that the main thing that they do there is not hire writers, it's produce voiceover and deliver, fully produced audio
In so
to
many
game
ways,
developers.
they're a middleman.
Yeah,
You've got a company that has this game they want produced, and they go to the contractor who has the electricians, the plumbers, and so forth of game making,
exactly. Yeah.
and put it together. And actually, that is one of the things I like about Blind Light. Um, you know, it's going to be good. You know, it's going to be quality. It's going to make sense.
Yeah, and they've had some really excellent clients over the years. I got to, getting my start there was really valuable because I got to work with some really incredible teams like the folks at Bethesda. But anyway, I became aware of the fact that producing VO was their main dish, and so I went to the producer at the time, as we were just talking about. I went to Tim Cubison and I said, "Hey, man, I'm a director. That's like I'm also a writer, but I studied directing, and that's sort of my main skill set. I've directed lots of on camera. I've never directed VO in the studio, but I can't imagine it's all that different, and I would like to do it. Would you please hire me to do that?" And he said, "Well, why don't you be a production coordinator for us for a while, so you can see how things work in the booth, and then we'll see." And so I was a production coordinator for a really wonderful voice director named Wes Gleason,
Wes is fabulous.
who
Yeah,
is
I work with Wes.
fantastic. He's the nicest man
Yeah, yeah.
in VO. He's such a sweetheart. And Wes was really generous with me, especially in light of the fact that he was essentially training me to compete with him for work. But he was really generous with his knowledge and very kind. And I was terrible. I was a terrible script coordinator because I couldn't. When you have that job, you're supposed to track the takes and take meticulous notes, and I just couldn't keep my mind off the performance part of it. I kept getting
Now,
distracted by the acting.
what were some of the thoughts you
Um,
were having during someone's performance? This sucked, or this was great, or why don't they try
Typically,
it like this?
well, typically this is great, but also it was always interesting to see, hear a take and know what kind of adjustment I would ask for, and then hear what Wes would ask for, and how often was it the same, and if it was the same kind of adjustment, how would he go about getting it, or if it was different, was there something I learned there, all that kind of stuff, right? I was very much invested in that process. But I muddled through on taking the notes, and what ended up happening was Blindlight got a job to produce the on-camera tutorials for a PlayStation Move game called The Fight. Do you remember PlayStation Move? It was like around the same time as the Wii. It had the glowing
Oh yeah, yeah,
orbs on the sticks.
yeah.
So they were making a game for that system that was about underground, unlicensed boxing, and they wanted Danny Trejo, the fantastic character actor Danny Trejo, to be the boxing coach who teaches you how to use the controllers, right? And they wanted to shoot actual, like, not a computer generated Danny Trejo, but like actual cinematics. And I was the only director in the Blind Light stable at that time who had on-camera experience. So I said I didn't have a ton, but I had made short films, and so I submitted my reel and I got that job. And I credit Danny Trejo with my career to a certain extent because um, this shoot was in many ways a potential disaster. They were trying, the company was trying to do it on a shoestring. So they had 5 days worth of material that we were supposed to shoot in 2 days.
Oh boy.
And there was all kinds of stuff that didn't work out right. We didn't have a teleprompter, and that the material was extremely technical. Hold the right stick and rotate a quarter turn, depressing the Z button, that kind of stuff. So you could never memorize. It's narrative,
With
right?
something that he's never worked with before either.
Something he's never worked with before either. They didn't have a teleprompter. We didn't have a costumer. So Danny learned to box in prison as a young man. He actually knew how to box, and he knew how to tape his hands. But if he hadn't known that, there was nobody on set who would have known that. You know what I mean? But look, I don't think either of us would hold it up as our greatest work, but we got it done, which was in some ways kind of a miracle because I'm super organized, like over preparer as a director. And Danny is an incredibly hardworking actor. And on the second day we were having lunch, I sat down to have lunch with him and I said, "Hey man, I just want you to know, like, I know this is not how this is supposed to be. And you would have been completely justified to be a diva about this shoot. It is, and I appreciate how hard you're working in spite of the fact that it really has been a little bit, kind of cut rate." And he said to me, "I've lived life with this job and I've lived life without it. And with it is better. So if you pay me what I'm worth, I will show up and work till it's done and do as hard a job as I can." And I thought that was just such a great attitude. I've tried to follow that advice in my own career since then. And really, just because Danny was an enormous trooper, we got that done. And thereafter, Blind Light hired me to direct all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
My first
game, stop for a moment because
right
I want to talk about actors and your experience with them, and somebody like a Danny Trejo. Now, I've never met the man, but I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I've always had the sense of him that he is that kind of person that lives in gratitude, and if he agrees to something, he's going to give you his best. And he's a guy that comes from the heart. What kind of experiences have you had with actors in video games? I'm sure many good ones. What's the worst thing somebody ever did? Don't have to give any names, but anything that just like, oh my God, what the hell?
So my experience of actors is that overwhelmingly they are incredibly hardworking, dedicated, and contrary to the stereotype, really egoless about the job, right? Because actors want to act. They need to act. They are artists and they need to perform. And by and large, I have found actors to be, frankly, overly obliging. One of the things I have to do sometimes in VO is say at the start of a session, like, "Hey, this could be vocally stressful. Please don't be a hero. Tell us if you're starting to experience discomfort. We'll stop the session, do another session down the road." And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure. And I have to be like, "No, really, no one's going to think less of you if you don't bull through this. We want you to be healthy." So actors I found to be compelling, obliging, accommodating, and hardworking, generally speaking. I think in VO in particular, we have an especially nice tribe of working professionals that many of whom I consider to be friends, and almost all of whom I have found to be fun and rewarding to work with. I can really count the bad behavior on one hand. I once had a fairly prominent well, I once had a film actor who had a fairly long career and was doing a game. And this, again, was at a time when on camera folks felt like they were slumming if they were in video games. I once had him show up to a session intoxicated on something. I don't know exactly what, but something.
But
That was
something.
not a great. That was not a great look. Um, and then another time, um, I had an actor um, who was really angling for more work and more pay stop a session on a very tightly scheduled project to call his agent to call the producer to ask for more money.
Oh boy.
And look, I think people should be paid for the work that they're doing, um, and well. But by doing that, he was kind of throwing the director and the engineer, whose bacon was kind of on the line, in the fire, and I just thought that was kind of low class. But honestly, like that's pretty much all I can think of. It's overwhelmingly been a
You know what?
rewarding.
That's very good to hear.
Yeah.
I've heard stories from other directors, and generally, when they tell me, they don't tell me a name, and I don't want to know a name. But sometimes, especially actors who have come out of movies, television, uh, as you said, feel like they're slumming, and sometimes don't bring their A game. And it always made me feel like, look, don't these game developers understand? Those of us who have been doing this for all these years, we love it. We are down for the cause. We'll bleed for you. As a matter of fact, some of us have bled from our throats, and
Yeah.
I've watched over the years as directors and producers have learned to take care of our throats. I was doing a session not so long ago, and every 20 minutes, the director said, "Well, let's take a break. Let's you know,
Yep.
let's give your voice a rest." And
Yep.
it really made a difference, and it taught me something that you can do a lot of vocally stressful stuff, but if you don't wait that whole hour, or worse yet, go 2 hours, your voice comes back much quicker and you do less damage.
Yep.
So, uh,
Yeah. The awareness of vocal health throughout the industry has gotten much better since I started. In the early days of my work in games, I was often in the unpleasant position of advocating for the health of the actor to developers who really didn't understand how it worked and were really pushing always to use an actor up. And that's not a pleasant position to be in, and I lost some work over that, to be honest.
probably work that losing that work has not hurt you.
No, I mean, I'm glad I did what I did. The number one thing that a director must do in any creative arts position is protect the well-being of the actor, because actors are enormously vulnerable while they're doing their work in one way or another. There's emotional vulnerability, there's physical vulnerability, and any time when I feel like that responsibility, that I've compromised it in any way, it's something that really eats at me, because before even the goal of getting good work, the responsibility of a leader in a position like that is to create a safe working environment. And I will say that in recent years, um, the devs have gotten really, really much better about being cognizant about vocal health. So to the point where I have clients who are like, should we stop? Are they doing okay? And that's great. That's good. And you're absolutely dead on that. Um, the more care you take in the process, the more frequently you're willing to rest, hydrate, straw phonate. You know, there's all
Blowing
kinds of
air through that
techniques.
straw.
Yeah,
And
blowing it through the straw, humming your range.
humming your range, yawning,
Yep.
kind of resets your
Yep.
throat. Hey, listen, I've
Yep.
got some people that want to ask you some questions.
Sure.
Let's see. Terry Briscoe, Kal-El, did you feel any pressure to be in entertainment because of your upbringing?
Oh, no. My parents are just the most like lovable hippies, who my mom famously has said to me many times in my life that she would love me if I were a potato. So, so no pressure from them at all. I will say, look, the life of a comic book artist is not a glamorous one. It's an overworked, underpaid position. If you want to be a comic book artist, congratulations. You can work any 18 hours of the day you want. but um, but what I will say is the upside to that is first and foremost, I knew as a bedrock fact of my life that it was possible for people to make a living in the arts. And in a rural place like Midcoast Maine, most kids do not know that.
Can't
In
get
fact,
that
they
from
are
it.
all they're yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Um, it, it I always tell people, the Stephen King story, if you replace the murder clown with like intergenerational alcoholism and dysfunction, is a perfect portrait of what it's like to grow up in Midcoast Maine. It's beautiful, but it's also gothic, and a lot of kids, and this is not unique to that region. A lot of kids from um, places that have economic struggle as part of the foundation of life are told, well, it's fine to do your singing or your painting or whatever as a hobby, but you can't make a living like that. And that holds people back. And I never faced that. And then the other thing I would say is, I did get to be around some really unbelievably gifted storytellers at a very young age. Not just my dad and not just my mom, who also is, she was a school teacher, but she was also an opera singer and a playwright and a number of other things. Um, but also, like, people like Walter and Louise Simonson and Mike Carlin and, just a long list of comic book luminaries. And that was an extra education of a sort, I think.
It
Um,
definitely was because we
yeah,
do what we see, not necessarily what we're told, and so much that we take in becomes us. So much of the
yeah,
ether that we're in. But I got a question for me. Did your
yeah.
parents get to hang out with R. Crumb at all?
Never with R. Crumb, as far as I know. My dad may have been at a comic convention where he was at some point or other, probably before he was a professional, probably when he was still a fan, in the 70s.
All right.
Um, but uh, but man, he's an interesting character, and they made that fictionalized movie about him with Paul Giamatti, which is pretty good. But there's a equally or perhaps even better documentary called Crumb about that guy.
Hey,
And man,
there's a main bell.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I'm in the house of a shipbuilder, friend of mine who works in a boatyard and is a really refined uh, shipbuilding professional, and he has a couple of nautical clocks around here that make.
And
uh,
I don't know why that warms my heart that a shipbuilder in Maine is your friend.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know, in so many ways, just a regular person, but even more regular because working with their hands, being a craftsman, making something. Man, that just warms my heart. Got another
yeah.
question. What inspired you to attend Emerson? Did you know what you wanted to be when you grow up? It sounds like you definitely knew. Um,
I did, although I will say, like in high school, I was writing and directing, but I was also acting a lot. And when I got to Emerson, I was originally going to double major. Um, in fact, I got cast as Macbeth in a production of Macbeth the first week I was there, and I ended up actually turning it down because I had a conversation with an academic advisor that same week who said, "Look, people who try to do both here often end up neglecting a serious focus in either. And because I had been acting for a long time and I felt like I had a pretty good foundation in that, I decided it was more important to focus on the filmmaking side of things, which I knew less about at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And so I did have a sort of decision gate watershed happen there.
Yeah.
Although I will
Do
say,
you have any regrets about the path you went down instead of going down the acting path?
no, I mean, you know, all directors should act. Even if you're terrible at it, you should do some of it. Even just if it's just classes, even just taking acting class, an improv class, something like that. Because A, you need to learn to speak the language of actors, and B, I really think you need the lived experience of what it is like to have the pressures of that moment come upon you, where you are called upon to deliver something truthful, something authentic, something beautiful, something potentially very personal. Like the way you'd
Yeah.
on tap, the way you'd hand somebody a grocery bag. You know what I mean? That's an experience that directors need to have.
Yeah. I I was, doing a little research on you, and I didn't know that you were an actor as well. And I know it's not your main gig, but I saw you over in L.A., over in North Hollywood, there at what's the name of the studio? Working out with some friends of mine on on a project. How did you get into that? What did you play? And is this something you're going to continue to
Are
do?
you talking about Carcerum, Bill
Yes,
Holmes's?
yes,
Yes.
that's it.
Um, okay. So Bill Holmes is this phenomenal character in the voiceover world, who has had a
He's a
really
great director over at that
he's a
studio.
he's a great director. He has brought I don't know anybody in the field who has done more to help young kids who are starting out in our field get oriented, get their feet under them, build the fundamentals of a career than Bill. And he does it. I mean, he teaches classes, but a lot of what he does for people for free. He nurtures young people and passes on his knowledge. And there's this wonderful little community of actors who built up around Compost Productions, which is his studio in North Hollywood, um, many of whom I have watched, come in as students, very green and hopeful, and become luminaries. Shir Dalal, E.K. Ahmadi, Bo Bridgeland. All of these folks are people who started out as just like a little sprout in Bill's garden. So I love Bill Holmes and what he does, and I'm very, um, I pay him great respect. But Bill was making making an audio drama, a fantasy audio drama called Carcerum, and he was asking his friends to be in it. Even those of us who are not. I mean, he had some spectacular talent in there. Ed Asner is in there, but he also asked, me to play a role. So
I'm gonna call
I
him
showed,
tomorrow and ask him why he didn't ask me.
I, you know, he will. He's got more coming. Um, yeah, Bill was like, "Hey, do you want to be in this?" And I was like, "Bill, I haven't acted professionally in 20 years." And he was like, "Ah, it's fine. You'll do great." So I played, I played a thug who shows up to roust some people in Fantasyland out of their home, somewhat unceremoniously, and it was a blast. I had a great time doing it.
And you know what?
I don't,
I was going to say
I don't, yeah.
acting is always a great time.
It's always a great time. They call it a play for a reason,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's at its best. I'm skeptical of a lot of American acting instruction that focuses on difficulty. Here's how to overcome obstacles. Here's how we talk about the work. And I think sometimes, if you go into your process expecting to overcome obstacles, you will encounter obstacles. I think it is possible, if you are trained and you are passionate, I think it is possible to enter flow state where your best work is also your freest, easiest, and most satisfying work.
You know
I think that's
that
true of everything, not just
that's
acting, but
interesting because
especially acting.
I do a lot of teaching, and I find it's a little of both. It's a little of, look, you gotta know that, what's the world you're in, what's motivated you, what caused you to say or do this thing, what are you thinking, feeling, doing, all that. But I also say, I want you to have that childlike joy that you had when you were a kid playing cops and robbers or whatever it was you were doing, and you weren't thinking about, am I doing this well? Am I is my
Right,
character on point?
right.
Um,
I mean, it is
Give
work.
yourself
It's
to it.
phenomenal work to get to the point where you can do that well. But when you're actually in the moment, in the truth of it, ideally, even if it's a scene that's horrible for the character, the meta experience for the actor should be one of success
Oh
and
yeah, oh
joy,
yeah.
and getting all the juice out of the fruit. There's this there's this special feature in the Shining DVD. During this production of that film, um, Stanley Kubrick's daughter was going around with like a 16 millimeter camera shooting behind the scenes material, right? And at one point, she finds Jack Nicholson in a dressing room. She goes down the hall. She finds him in a dressing room. He's in there eating a plate of spaghetti, and they just start like shooting the breeze, right? It's very casual. They're having a good time, cracking jokes. At some point, he stands up. He walks down the hall. She follows him down the hall. He's eating the spaghetti. They come to a soundstage. You see the backs of some flats and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh, okay, hang on. I got to go do this thing." And he hands the plate of spaghetti off to a PA, and then she films him doing this. That here's Johnny. This scene from the
Here's
back,
Johnny.
right? The most intense scene in any movie, right? And then they call cut, and he's like, "Yeah, so where's my spaghetti?" And he picks in this little featurette. He goes from eating the spaghetti to picking up the mania of Jack Torrance, and then sets it right back down again in a
You,
way
you
that
know,
it changed my understanding of how acting could be. I realized it doesn't have to be method acting where you're
I, I
you're in your trailer for hours depressed to play a character who's depressed. If you train for emotional elasticity and flexibility, then you can go fearlessly into very scary places for the character and then come right back
and come
if you
right back.
focus on coming back
I
as
am
much as
annoyed.
going in.
I am annoyed with character actors and that whole idea of you've got to make everybody's life around you a living hell to play this, whatever this character is. Um,
Yeah.
and I tell people sometimes, well, we're method actors minute by minute. So you're going to jump in, you're going to jump. When you're in it, you're there. You're this character. You're all of that. And when you're done, you're done. And you should be able to go back in it because I forget who the actor was, some old English actor, and it says, so to tell me the secret of acting. Well, I'll tell you what we do when we're acting. We are pretending we are someone else. And
Yeah.
that
Well,
was
there's
the
that.
extent.
There's an apocryphal story about Peter O'Toole and Dustin Hoffman. It was Peter. No, sorry, Laurence Olivier. Laurence Olivier and
I think
Dustin
it was
Hoffman,
Laurence Olivier that
and
said that.
they're working on a film together. And Dustin Hoffman had a scene to shoot where his character is supposed to be like exhausted and hungover. And so the night before, he stayed up all night and he drank. He got hung. He comes in looking like hell. And in the morning, he runs into Olivier. They're about to shoot this scene. And he says, "Dear boy, you look terrible." And he explains, "Yeah, I had to get into character, so I was up all night to, do all this stuff." And apparently, Olivier said to him, "Have you considered just acting?" Which, look, Dustin Hoffman's an amazing actor, but the point is that it can be to do method acting in the American sense, because again, that business of like I'm in character all the time and I'm being cruel to my co-stars and that kind of thing, that comes from an American misapprehension of the original Stanislavski. It came in through the Meisner, the sort of mistranslation of the book, right? Whereas
It-
Stella Adler, who actually trained with Stanislavski, it's not like that, right? Stanislavski even said the method is whatever works, right? He said that at the end of his career. But that business of like being locked in character and letting it cause pain in your actual life is potentially really dangerous for the actor. It's possible to derive a great performance from it, right? We know of these actors, Daniel Day-Lewis, people who go really deep into their character and they make it a wonderful piece of art. But you have to be super careful with that, not to do yourself damage, not to damage the people around you. You know, you watch Jim Carrey in Man in the Moon, and then you see that documentary about him making it, and yes, it's this magnificent performance, but you watch the documentary, it's like watching Jim Carrey, cut himself. It's painful to see what he's doing to himself to play that role, is really
And
unfortunate.
perhaps he didn't have to do it.
And maybe he didn't
Sometimes
have to
we
do it,
think we have to do that thing
Yeah.
that we might not necessarily do. Couple things that I just wanted to mention. You've been doing some work for Disney. What is this project? 2,000 plus pages of voice content for Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar. What is that?
So I had a stint at Disney. When did I leave? 2018. So I was there for 5 and change years. And while I was there, I started out in a team that was recording audiobooks and apps related to publishing. And that line of business kind of petered out. And we had this amazing audio production team, Randy Coppinger, who had been at Disney Character Voices for 20 years. And, this is a really amazing team. And so I knew that Alexa and Siri and Google Home were happening. And I said, I got Alexa's attention here. I knew that was happening, and I knew that they were going to need content for these spaces. They were going to need material in the audio space. And so I did a $300 prototype with this incredible team that we had of what an audio-only narrative experience with Disney Magic could feel like. It was essentially radio plays. We called them audio tunes. And the timing was just right. We ended up creating a whole new line of business off of that $300 prototype that I put together with that team. We brought in $40 million to Disney over a year and a half.
And of course, you got half of that, right?
Listen, Disney is in some ways the most incredible place to work. You're with the best artists in the world, right? Everybody there is like the cream of the crop. It's like a graduate education, truly. That said, they know they can have anyone they want, and often the pay is lower end of the spectrum.
I have been under contract as a long-term employee 3 times for several years each time. And it's great to have that monthly check that comes in, but you realize, boy, if I were doing this piece by piece, I'd be making about 10 times more of this. And
I will say that I went to the hospital with exhaustion twice doing that job.
But you know what? You want it on your resume.
You do. You want it on your resume. And like I said, I learned stuff there. I worked with the team at Disney Character Voices, Renee Johnson and Ben Hoppy, these unbelievable professionals, with every member of all the animated film teams, with all the folks at Marvel and some of the folks at Star Wars. I mean, really, I got a chance to work on incredible franchises. We were making Aladdin shorts for the first time in 15 years.
Speaking of shorts, don't stand up. No, just kidding. But speaking of shorts, Doug in real life. How did you come up with that? And for those who don't know, it's an actual dog doing things with people. And you have written a script and put words in this dog's mouth. And the dog is talking to people, and you believe it.
So I had this idea that it was originally called Disney Unexpected with a big D on the end. So an enormous amount of the audience now is watching shorts online on YouTube. And at the time I was at Disney, we really didn't have much in that space. And I thought, Disney needs to occupy this space, because there were bootleg Disney cartoons that like some jamoke was making that were getting millions and millions of views. People think they're Disney cartoons, and sometimes they're really awful. And so I said, we have to inhabit this space, and it has to be quick hitting, and it has to do what a great YouTube video, at least of that time, does, which is provide a sort of little unexpected delight.
Yes.
It's like, oh, here's a skateboard. Oh, here's a dog skateboarding, right? Oh, I didn't expect that. So my idea was we do this series where we have real people in a setting somewhere, and we're filming, and then suddenly a Disney character shows up and there's some kind of magic. So the kind of thing would be like a video where a bunch of people go up to go skydiving, and Donald Duck is in the plane and Donald Duck goes skydiving. Or people go into a restaurant and they sit down at all the tables and they're ordering, and then like Sneezy the dwarf comes in and sits down at the back of the room and he's just ordering, and like keeps almost sneezing, and he doesn't quite, and then finally he does, and then there's this great magic trick where you can make all the stuff in a room blow off the tables at once. It's like a stage magic. That's what would happen, right? That kind of thing. And I pitched this, and I found some collaborators in the company, and we ended up making this video, Doug in Real Life, where we took Doug is this character from Up, who's a sort of a golden retriever with a voice box that translates his thoughts. Squirrel, right? That guy.
Squirrel!
And my idea was we'll build the device to put on an actual dog with a radio mic in it, and we'll get a voice actor off camera, and then we'll let this dog run around the park and talk to people and film their reactions. So that's what we did. And it was fun because we were like, improvising bits for him to say in the moment, and it was just it was like just a member of the production team doing the voice on the day, but then we got to edit it down and work with the actual voice actor, and for an overdub and all this kind of stuff. And it was a hit. It was the most successful viral video Disney's ever had, or at least had up to that point. It was like 20 million unique views in the first 24 hours. It kind of blew all their other stuff out of the water. And they have since made on Disney Plus a series called Pixar IRL, which is this concept. Sadly, they did not call me, or as far as I know, any of the people who were involved in the show.
If they were going to call you, they had to pay you more money.
But it was a pleasure doing the short. It was a great success, and I still think just so charming to see, particularly the little kids in the park react to the talking dog. Is just like, I don't know, it's heartwarming.
Well, listen, we're getting closer. We have about 7 minutes here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you are like me. You have signed 1 million NDAs. But what do you have coming up that you can talk about?
Well, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is announced but not yet out, and there is some spectacular voice work in this game.
Who's in it?
Well, it's the last
once again, NDA, yeah.
Well, no, a lot of the actors are announced. It's the last performance of Kevin Conroy as Batman, as far as I know, which was a privilege, for sure. Oh, did I lose you? Oh,
nope,
there we
I'm
go.
here.
Sorry, the internet. And Tara Strong is back as Harley Quinn.
One of the Tara.
We've got an all-star cast. Bumper Robinson is in it. We've just got just a phenomenal cast. If I named them all, I'd be here all evening. But it's been done with an enormous amount of love and care, and the storytelling for these characters is really, at the risk of sort of tooting our own horn, I'm really proud of the work. And Amanda Wyatt did some unbelievable work. I'm her second chair on that project, and I
Okay.
don't know much about how the
She's a great
gameplay
director.
is, but
She's a great director.
she's an unbelievable
Yeah,
director. Yep,
I've worked
really
with her
good.
a
And
few times. It's been fantastic.
I am lucky to just to be a support to her when I can be, because she's just really incredible. And this project has some excellent work by all concerned. So I'm excited for that one. I don't know much about
We
what the gameplay is going to be like, but the narrative part is super fun.
someone had a question earlier that I can't find just
Sure.
at the moment, but I'm going to ask it for them. Uh, do you do casting as well, or just directing? You are handed a group of actors? Do you make
I do
suggestions?
some casting. Typically when I'm casting, it would be about doing like an open call and then weeding it down to 4 or 5 that I then pass to the developer with my notes about why I think that each of them is potentially the one. I don't do a ton of casting since I left Disney, just a project every now and then. I've got one coming up, it looks like. I'm hopeful. So, yeah, from time to time, I do some casting. Not
Let
as
me ask
much
you this:
as.
do you think it's a problem being a director and a casting director and casting things that you want to direct? Maybe you're a little too close to the people you're pulling in.
No, I think that it would be better if more casting directors were also directors because they know what to listen for. I'm not
And what
listening for
would
the
you
most
what do you
polished
what would you
performance.
say you listen for?
I listen for your ability to make emotional adjustments in the moment. Um, really, I mean, I could tell a whole other class about I teach a whole we have a whole nother hour about auditioning, but what I will say is your job when you're auditioning is to make it so real for you as an actor that it's irresistibly real for us when we're listening. I was casting a project once where there were like we had like 500 auditions come in for one of the main characters who it's a sort of anime project with a kind of a sword swinging himbo as one of the main characters. We got 500 auditions for it, of which 100 easily could have played the role and probably done a pretty good job. And what it came down to was there was one of the lines in the breakdown was something like magic. I don't know much about magic, but if you told me how to become a better swordsman, well, then I'd listen to you. And we heard a bazillion versions of it, right? And then this one guy, not the most experienced guy, not the longest resume, pretty green, he sent in an audition as Jacob Craner. He sent in an audition, and he delivered the line like this. It was like, magic. Yeah, I don't know much about magic, but if you told me how to be a better swordsman, well, I'd listen to you. And as soon as we heard that, everybody in the room who was doing this casting was like, that's the guy. We could all see him shirtless, chopping wood, sort of only kind of paying attention, over his shoulder, like just looking sweaty and handsome and kind of like lovable and dumb. And we were like, that's the dude, right? It's him 100%. We all heard it. And later, I asked him, because I was curious. I was like, hey, were you chopping wood in your audition? He said, actually, I was stacking bricks. But it didn't matter. It was so real to him that it was irresistibly real to us. It created a whole scene
You
around
know,
this one
you just
context.
illustrated a point I try to get my students to understand, that it's not about the words. It's about the whole pictures. The words are part of it. But
Yeah.
what you are doing is as important as what you are saying, because very rarely are we just, I'm talking to you, now you're talking to me. I'm talking to you, now you're talking to me. We're walking, we're talking, we're in video games or whatever, we're fighting, we're limping because we're hurt, we're scratching, whatever it is. You want to create that scene and the movement in that scene. You want to block that scene in your head, so it's not
Yeah.
just I am saying these words, and it is never, oh, if I say these words like this, I will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're dead on. It's you got to go to the theater of the mind. You got to see the things that are there, and you have to react to them. There's a certain amount of imagination happening in every kind of acting.
Well, I want
Acting
you to
is,
repeat. I want you to repeat that. That was big. You got to go to the theater of the mind, see what is there, and act
and
upon
react.
and react to them.
Yeah, and react to it. Yeah,
Did you get that down,
the cinema,
everybody?
a certain amount of make believe in any kind of acting, right? Acting is more similar from format to format than different. Acting on stage, acting on camera, acting in the booth, black box
You
theater,
different
whatever.
techniques, but
It's
the same thing.
fundamentally imaginative, childlike imaginative play with adult goals,
Yes.
right? And the way that VO is so if you're acting in front of a green screen, you're imagining the green screen's an alien world. If you're acting on stage, you're creating a fourth wall where the audience is. You're using your imagination to do these things. The one thing about VO is that capacity to imagine an element is just more. Everything is happening
It's
up there except for your
necessary.
performance. Your scene partners are there, your props, your costumes, your setting. So you just want to build out that, you want to work that muscle of imagination.
Yeah.
And you can do it ahead of time. You can take your script and draw a little diagram of the room. So
I
you can
when
just go there. You don't have to think about it in the moment. You just
I
go
try
there
to
and say, I know there's a desk over there. I can go sit down at it
I
up
try to
here.
get my
Right?
students to think this. Well, what just happened? What's he thinking? What's his character doing? Block it in
Yeah.
your mind. We are missing costume, another actor, blocking, and a scene that we have to create here. And when you do that, you bring more believability to your performance. And my question for my students is always not does it sound good, but do you believe the performance?
Yeah. Yeah. And the way into that is both incredibly simple and something you can study for a lifetime. It's the way in is imaginative play, thorough imaginative play.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we have, well, we're overtime now. We hit 7:02. You're on East Coast time, so it's even later
I
there than
am.
it is here. But
It's
listen,
10.
Kal-El, man, I can't wait to work with you again. It,
Likewise.
it is always a pleasure. You're such a gentleman. You know what you want, and yet you give the actor room to bring that thing that they do. And I think that's one of the reasons you are enjoying so much success and are having so many wonderful experiences in this part of the business and that part of the business and that part of the business. Bravo, bravo, my friend,
Well,
bravo.
thank you. It is a pleasure to work with you anytime and every time we have done so, and I'm honored to be here talking with you and talking about this pursuit.
Yeah.
So thank you for having
Well,
me.
you
And
know what? This could
um,
have been a conversation that just you and I, nobody listening, just talking,
oh,
voice acting and whatnot, and it felt like that. And this was just a whole lot of fun. But I'll let you go. I hope you've
pleasure.
had your dinner and safe travels. I
Thank
know
you.
you're in Maine. At some point, you're going to be coming back here,
Back
going,
to LA tomorrow. Yep.
or as they say in Maine, you can't get there from here.
Yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kal-El, fantastic, great director, great person. And as usual, people that I've known for a while, I get to learn some things about them and their story as well. Now, Ask Dave Fennoy Anything, all of them, this one included, are on my YouTube channel, Dave Fennoy Voiceover Training. Please subscribe if you are interested in voiceover training with me, davefennoy.com. Click on the Study VO tab at the top. Just want to follow me on Twitter or X now, Dave Fennoy VO. So I will see you next week. In the meantime and in between time, book something.